It's earnings season, and today I want to talk about three major automakers that released their earnings for this quarter: Tesla, General Motors, and Ford. Now, there will be timestamps down in the description below if you're interested in skipping around this video, depending on the company that you're interested in learning about. But let's first talk about General Motors. Now, it does seem as though for General Motors, the tides have begun to turn, at least as far as this quarter's earnings go. And on this good news, General Motors had its second best day on the market since the 2009 emergence from bankruptcy, which is actually crazy to think about. And this positive stock performance for General Motors really hinged on the fact that GM reported some positive outlook for tariffs, despite the fact that they have spent over $1.1 billion on tariffs in Q3 alone, as well as the fact that General Motors outperformed expectations. And this really overshadowed the fact that when push comes to shove, General Motors really didn't have great year-over-year performance for the quarter. Because sure, earnings per share was at $2.80 versus the $2.31 expected. Their revenue was $48.59 billion versus the $45.27 billion that was expected. However, despite these things, which was deemed a positive thing for General Motors North American pre-tax earnings fell by 37%, and revenue dropped by 1.5%, while net income fell by a whopping 57%. So despite the fact that General Motors did beat analyst expectations, they did see declines in pretty much all major categories for the quarter. But as I mentioned a moment ago, General Motors' big silver lining was their tariffs and the fact that tariff costs look as though they're going to be less than what they initially expected. But again, they still cost GM $1.1 billion in Q3. Additionally, some big news coming out of General Motors this week comes in the form of autonomous driving news, updates, and future goals. With General Motors announcing eyes-off technology, which would allow for drivers to take their eyes off the road on pre-mapped roads, as well as Google Gemini AI integration. And there is one very clear target that GM is going after with this announcement, and that's Tesla. Speaking of Tesla, let's move on to their earnings. Tesla, while technically showing their earnings miss, really didn't show that bad of a quarter. Their earnings per share was 50 cents versus the 54 that was expected, and revenue was at $2.81 billion versus the $26.37 billion that was estimated. So earnings per share missed expectations while revenue actually exceeded them. However, while revenue increased, net income fell by 37%, and this profit drop reflected lower EV prices and a 50% increase in operating expenses, which Tesla has stated is due to artificial intelligence costs and other R&D related expenses. Now, when it comes to Tesla specifically, almost more than any other automaker, I am not surprised to see that they had a relatively strong quarter, at least revenue-wise, because of the fact that September 30th, 2025 was not only the end of the third quarter, but it was also the end of the EV tax credit. And in the months leading up to this demise of the EV tax credit, we saw people going out in droves buying EVs so that they could take advantage of this tax credit before it expired. And this absolutely had an impact, a short-term impact on Tesla sales for this quarter. EV sales were inflated across a variety of different EV automakers for this past quarter, and what the real test will really be is to see how Tesla sales and just EV sales in general, how they trend in Q4, but even more so in Q1 of 2026 after the holiday rush has ended. However, aside from the actual earnings, there were some other notable aspects of Tesla's earnings call. And truthfully, there were a lot of discussions from Elon Musk about the hypothetical and ambitious claims that they continuously fail to deliver on. With commentary from Elon ranging from Optimus will be an incredible surgeon, that's Musk referring to the Tesla robot, to him stating that robotaxis and robots can create a world where there is no poverty, to Elon defending his massively inflated pay package by saying, "I just don't feel comfortable building a robot army here and then being ousted." If you've seen my channel before, you know that I am not the biggest fan of Elon Musk, and truthfully, I really have no words for what Elon Musk has to say about Tesla, their earnings, and their future outlook. But I guess what I will say is that if Tesla continues to fall short in 2026 and Tesla still stands by Elon Musk, well then I guess they deserve whatever performance they see as a result. Now let's move on to Ford. Now Ford reported their earnings yesterday after the closing bell, and I gotta be honest, earnings aside, Ford is kind of a show. While Ford did beat expectations with net income, earnings per share, and revenue up year over year, tariff costs were significant for the company, and in Q3 alone, Ford paid $700 million towards tariffs, which, similar to GM, Ford offered some positive outlook on tariffs moving forward, largely due to the tariff mitigation policy, which was introduced by the Trump administration for domestic automakers, which is basically where the government is offering an import adjustment offset that provides a credit for a percentage of the manufacturer's suggested retail price, or MSRP, on U.S. assembled vehicles to counteract tariffs on imported parts. This is basically a policy that's saying, hey, if you assemble vehicles here in the United States, but you're still getting hammered by tariffs because of the parts that you use, we will offer credits to kind of offset this. So this has certainly had an impact on Ford, General Motors, really any domestic automaker that's doing a lot of production here in the States. However, not all was sunshine and roses with Ford, and they did have some negativity as well in the form of $1.5 to $2 billion in losses due to a fire at a parts manufacturing facility, and they have adjusted their 2025 outlook to reflect this, which didn't really look great for the company. However, I have a massive bone to pick with Ford, and that is these damn recalls. Recalls for all automakers feel as though they're getting absolutely ridiculous, but whenever it comes to Ford specifically, it is just out of control. And I've made so many videos about this in the past, but I just continuously asked myself, and I would scream this into the abyss until I am blue, when are automakers going to be held accountable for the fact that they are issuing so many and an increasingly large amount of recalls for vehicles on the road? Just this week, Ford has expanded a backup camera recall, which now affects 1.5 million cars. They recalled 59,000 cars due to a fire risk, 336,000 Mustangs for a seatbelt recall, and that is just this week. And I'm recording this on a Thursday. As we sit here today, we are towards the middle to end of October, and Ford already has the most recalls of any other automaker in history in 2025, and we still have 2.5 months to go. It is just completely unacceptable, and I just continuously ask myself the question, when will automakers be held accountable? Because at this point, this is nothing but negligence. But like always, you guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, comments, if you have anything to add, I would love to hear it. So make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell. And I will see you guys in the next video.